Hello, welcome back to another video. I hope you're doing really well. Today I'm going to be sharing how I'm growing my glutes and 5 must-do glute exercises. These are exactly what have helped me build and maintain my glutes. I'm going to do a voiceover throughout my entire workout and just show you exactly what I do, starting with the warm-up and activation. So this is probably the most important part. You really want to make sure you're always activating your glutes first before you even lift up a weight. This is loosening up tight muscles, especially if you've been sat all day at a desk, and making sure you're getting your glutes activated before you move on to any big lifts like your squats, lunges, hip thrusts. So that's a deep squat to hamstring stretch, and I'll perform between 10 and 15 reps and between 1 to 2 sets just until I feel a little bit looser. And then we're moving on to the next stretch, which is windshield wiper exercises. This is a really nice hip mobility movement, and if you've got tight hips in general, you could spend a little bit more time here just slowing things down. And also what I love with warming up and activation work is you can just tune into what parts of your body feel like they need a little bit more TLC and a bit more time. For me, my hips always seem to be the tightest if I've been sitting down a lot, and again I'll just do between 10 and 15 reps, 1 to 2 sets. Doesn't need to be long and lengthy. Then I'm doing a deep squat stretch. If you're wanting to improve your squat depth, this is a really good stretch to include regularly as well, and it'll help you get a much deeper squat. And then just some hip openers. Literally do the exact same thing before every leg day, and I notice such a big difference in my actual sessions. And then I'll just do about 10 reps each side, and then some leg swings as well. This is really nice for opening up your hips and just loosening things up. So to activate my glutes, I'm doing some body weight hip thrusts with a split stance. So I've got one foot slightly in front of the other. And then I also really like to do some unilateral work. So I'll just use a light weight and just really concentrate on getting that mind to muscle connection. So really feeling each glute is engaged. And I just think you'll feel your glutes a lot more when you move into your weighted heavy exercises. Without a doubt, the most transformative way to grow your glutes and transform your glutes is by making sure you're training your glutes in all 3 planes to really get that 3D glute. Making sure I'm training my glutes in 4 categories mainly. So always including a thrust bridge exercise to build the upper and lower glutes, a squat lunge that emphasizes more of your lower glutes and quads, and then a hinge or pull exercise which emphasizes your lower glutes and hamstrings, and then an abduction movement, and that mainly emphasizes on your upper glutes by targeting the gluteus medius. This is a muscle that is quite often neglected and something I never used to think about or train that much. Starting off with the number 1 exercise for your glutes, which is barbell hip thrusts. And you want to make sure you've got a really thick, comfy pad. That way you're going to be able to lift a lot more weight and it's not going to hurt or bruise your hips as much. Now, these target the gluteus maximus, which is our biggest muscle in our body and obviously the biggest muscle out of our 3 gluteal muscles. So this makes up a large part of the shape and appearance of each side of our hips and glutes. As well, the hip thrust places so much tension on the glutes throughout the entire range of motion. It starts to create tension on the glutes as soon as the hips begin the movement, and then of course with peak muscular activation happening at the top of the movement. So this is why it's beneficial to add a hold at the end of your set or in between reps. So I do 1 warm-up set with a lighter weight, and then I do 4 working sets where I add weight each time, and I can really load up on hip thrusts. I would say it's one of my strongest exercises and something I enjoy the most as well. So I do 4 sets of 10 reps, and then I also add a hold in the end and just really concentrate on feeling it in my glutes, keeping my chin tucked. With your hips, you want to be in a scooping motion, and you want to have your legs not too far out from your body so you can really feel your glutes recruiting. Something else really important when it does come to growing your glutes is training different resistance profiles. So in the hip thrust, we are working our glutes in the shortened position, whereas a squat, you're working your glutes in a lengthened position. That's where the peak tension is. A common struggle that people find is not feeling their glutes when they are doing a hip thrust. So it could be because your feet are too far out or too close together. So say if you're feeling it in your knees, you want to make sure your knees are directly under your heels. You've got your pelvis tucked like downwards so that you're coming up in a scooping motion, your chin tucked and core engaged. Listen, if you are not doing this combo, then oh my God, your glutes will be on fire. So I start with hip thrust, like I said, because they recruit the most glute muscles and you get the most bang for your buck with your hip thrust. And then I usually almost always go into barbell RDLs afterwards. So Romanian deadlifts come in second when it comes to the highest muscle activity in our glutes and hamstrings. And that's because they're working our glutes in the lengthened position and the hip thrust is in the shortened. So definitely make sure you include in these two. You could use a dumbbell RDL as well. And here's a little hack that is super useful. So I'll use a rack if I'm doing barbell RDLs just to save my energy from having to, say, deadlift the bar up to myself. So I start with a warm-up set, so without weight, say, and just make sure I can properly engage my mind to muscle connection. And then I do 4 working sets, really focusing on slowing things down and concentrating on that mind to muscle connection. And your form is super important with your RDL, so you want to keep the bar as close as possible to your legs and knees, almost like you're shaving the top but not completely touching, and then you're pushing your hips back like you're closing a car door. And you'll be able to feel this all in your glutes and hamstrings. A really common mistake with RDLs is not having your shoulders back or contracting your lats. So you want to make sure your shoulders are sort of tucked into your back pocket. I quite like that one. And also you're not overextending at the top. So you sort of see people push through their hips and then you're overextending on your spine. One major thing that has completely changed the shape, I'd say, of my glutes is including single leg movements and always including either a Bulgarian split squat or a step up. So here the box height is really important. So you want to make sure it's not too high or too low, and you're driving your foot down into the box. You lean forward slightly, pushing your hips back when you're coming down into position. Watching this back, and I swear to God, I can feel my glutes burning from here. So I'm doing 3 sets of 10 reps here. Having a water break, contemplating my life. I feel like I question, is this really worth it when I am training my glutes? This is a really common superset that I finish with. So this is a glute focused 45-degree hyperextension, and you're rounding your back in this exercise. This is to shut off your lower back muscle so you can feel it more in your glutes. And again, I think this is quite a common exercise that people struggle to feel in their glutes, and something that really changed that for me was making sure I'm pointing my feet outwards, and this creates higher glute activation. And I think it's quite a weird sensation, this exercise. So I'll do 4 sets of 10 reps and then take the weight off and do as many reps as I can finish with. And then straight into the hip abduction machine. And this is something I didn't used to include, and I've really noticed this has helped me with my side glutes because it's quite a difficult muscle to target and it's not something we regularly use. So I actually love this machine. I've seen this has got some, I don't know, it's not the most loved machine, but I love it, and I'll usually finish with 3 sets of 10 reps here and go as heavy as I possibly can and throw in a finisher, as many reps as I can possibly do till failure on the end. And then lastly, depending on how much time I have, I will just throw in some cable kickbacks with my foot pointed outwards. This is also a really good one, but like I say, you don't need to include a million different exercises or overcomplicate your glute training. I think that is something I've made the mistake of as well. As long as you've got between 4 to 5 decent, good exercises with your compounds in there, you will notice gains if you're progressively overloading your weight over time and sticking consistent. Then something else so key is how often you're training your glutes, and this really depends on how intense you're training, your rest and recovery. I can't even go over that enough. That's a mistake I made for a long time. I was overtraining my glutes, so now I train my glutes at least 2 times a week, sometimes 3, depending on my sleep and what I've had on. And you don't need to be doing, like between 8 and 10 different glute exercises if you stick to the basics and make sure you're doing your compound, between 4 to 6 kind of exercises is more than enough, and it generally takes me about an hour-ish, depending on if I'm filming my workout as well. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this one. I'd love you to stick around by subscribing and making sure you've liked this video, and I'll see you in the next one.